Hello, and welcome to another Blender Cookie tutorial. This is David Ward. When I last left you, we had baked out the tangent normal maps of our high resolution sculpt to our lower polygon model, and applied that normal map to the low polygon model and did our test render, and that's what we're looking at here. So I'm just going to go ahead and exit out, and before I go any further, just go ahead and save as. And I named this one 3B because it was the second one, and a multi-part series already, so I'll name this one 3C, and go ahead and save. Okay, so I got 3C up here. Now I've got my normal map set up. Now I need to get a nice flesh tone map. So I'm going to integrate Blender's texture paint function. So if you happen to watch the YouTube video that the time-lapse video that I made, you'll notice that Blender liked to crash an awful lot when it was when I was doing the texture painting. So hopefully that won't happen this time. If it does, I can kind of show you what I did to kind of adapt and overcome on that one. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and go over here in our UV image editor and just create a new image here. So new, and let's give it a nice vaguely flesh tone color, kind of just a light orangey color, maybe about right there, maybe a little darker. There we go, that'll work. Okay, and what size did it make it? Too bad you can't see image info when you go. I guess I'll create another one. 1024. Let's go ahead and change the sizes now. Let's go ahead and make this. I like to go with at least 2000 by 2000. Gives you a pretty high resolution mesh to work with. And of course it did not. I didn't get a chance to change the color. So I'll just do that as I'm painting. And I'm going to do that. So let's go ahead and get rid of our properties panel. We don't really need that open right there. And one thing that might help on the frequent crashing is to go ahead and turn your subdivision off. Let's go ahead and click that right there, and we can still see our basic shapes. And if we go into wireframe view, you can still see it's still a decent amount of polygons there. So we'll come back to solid view. We won't have any issues of low polygon, having a weird shape while we're trying to paint over it. So anyways, so let's pop into texture paint mode right there. And you can already see that the only texture that this has applied to it is the tangent normal map, and we don't want that. But that's fine because we won't be affecting that as long as we go into image painting over here. And let's say we start painting. Should show up over here. Nope, it's showing up on our tangent normal map. So let's undo that. And okay, what we need to do is tab into edit mode here, in edit mode of our texture painting. And you can see over here in the texture paint UV editor, it still has the tangent normal map loaded. So what we need to do is just click on the little thumbnail picture right there, and just go ahead and, I guess we were using untitled.01. And if we go back here and tab back out of edit mode and have texture paint, you can see that it's now got this black texture. So let's do this. Let's create our skin tone here like we had earlier, about right there. And let's make our brush really big and the strength 100%. And I'll just go ahead and just paint all of this. You know what? Let me just make a new image. New. Make sure it's got the right colors. This gets kind of tedious if you're not careful. Okay. So there we go. And there we go. Okay. Got to make sure you click here on this box instead of just clicking out, because then you can have the option to go ahead and set the dimensions that you want. Okay. And we'll go ahead and name this one elf skin. Okay. Now we can click out there. And let's make sure we go into edit mode and go ahead and apply that to our UV coordinates. And there we go. So let's go ahead and save this image. Save as. And we'll go ahead and name it elf_skin here as well. Go ahead and save. And now, as we're painting, we want to go, instead of trying to save the whole Blender file, which we'll go ahead and do right here, as we're painting, we don't want to save the Blender file because that's just saving our image, or our scene data. What we want to do is we want to save the image file. So we paint a little bit, we go image save. Paint a little bit, image save. Or you can just hit, Alt S, and it'll save that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start painting on our little guy here. Let's make our brush a little smaller, obviously, and our strength down just a little bit. Just kind of want to airbrush on here instead of, just a solid hard stroke. So let's change our color a little bit darker, and then bring the darkness down there. Okay, and we'll just right-click over here and just start kind of painting in some of these areas, like around the eyes, and some of the the areas where they might be recessed in the face a little bit. Kind of have a darker shade. And image save. Or like I said, Alt S also does it. So let's go ahead and do this side. Okay. Now you might notice over here, as we're painting, we got some weird shapes starting to come out. So we're going to have to clean those up later on when we kind of get done with kind of what we're doing. We're going to have to go back in and kind of clean some of this up. But that's no big deal. It's easily done in a image manipulation program such as Photoshop or GIMP. I'm not real familiar with GIMP, but I'm going to make the attempt to use it for those of you who don't have access to Photoshop. I'll go ahead and see what I can do with GIMP there. And let's go ahead and Alt S. Okay. Let's brush up around on the nose. Now this may not be totally anatomically correct to have the skin tone in this particular fashion, but I kind of think it looks pretty neat if you sort of darken up the recessed areas and then kind of lighten up the areas that are kind of coming out a little bit. Kind of gives it a nice, I don't know how you describe it, but I think it really looks nice. So let's go ahead and that's how I'm going to do this. You can kind of do yours as you like. And let's go ahead and Alt S real quick. Save as often as you can remember to. And one good thing about texture painting is you can see right here there's a seam there. And if we scroll out here, we can kind of see where it's connecting over here. But that's the beauty of texture paint, is you can kind of just keep basically brushing at it until it kind of clears those weird seam areas up. And if you were just painting the texture in Photoshop, it'd be really difficult to get those two edges to match up properly. So the texture painting is a very, very good tool. Let's go ahead and Alt S. Let's just kind of darken up the beginnings of his torso area. Let's come back here on the back of his head. Now I'm just clicking. I'm not really clicking and dragging too much because, well, I'm never sure of how that'll affect everything. So if I just click and drag, I guess it could work, but in texture paint mode, Blender seems to be a little laggy. So it doesn't want to act real smooth. So if you just click here and there, you got plenty of time for Blender to catch up as you're kind of just scrolling around in the scene. Okay, so this is looking pretty decent. Now, one big thing that I noticed when I did the time-lapse video of the Elfi model on YouTube, especially on the ears. You're kind of looking at, go ahead and save this real quick. You're kind of painting as you're looking at it. So if I paint like right here, you're going to see sort of a stencil type of shape to where if I scroll around, you can kind of see where it does not paint on the other side. And sometimes that's good, but then it kind of makes, like right here, for example, you can see that it's kind of a messy texture map right there. So, like I said, we'll have to clean some of that up when we kind of get done here. We're just this is sort of a good foundation texture map, and we'll go back in later and get the extra detail, or not necessarily the detail, but to clean it up a little bit nicer. I'm gonna get inside the ears there. Okay, almost there with this particular color. Now, a little bit there. Now I'd kind of like to just go and make it a little bit more, have a little bit more of a red tint. So just going to move this over, maybe brighten it up just a little bit, and then increase the strength, or decrease the strength way down. And I'm just going to kind of go in here and just kind of put a few spots here and there of where he might have some more reddish colors, like we'll say like on his cheeks, for example, and then maybe on the tip of his nose. You get both sides, maybe underneath it as well. And let's go ahead and save, Alt this. Okay, and then also we want to get some extra reddish tone there on the earlobes. And as I've said with lots of other things, you can spend hours trying to get a lot of detail painted in here. And actually, the more time you spend on it, you know, the better it might look. So if you've got the patience, you go for it. Okay, let's kind of go up here and just, we don't really want to paint lipstick on the guy, but he probably should have a little bit darker lips. So let's just go ahead and change it from this pinkish tone, kind of make it a little darker, kind of go back towards the orange color just a little bit, and then make it a little darker here. And then we'll come over here and decrease our brush size. And now we'll just kind of start painting a little bit over the lip area. Just enough to kind of darken it up some. Okay, we'll zoom out some more. And let's go ahead and save that again. Okay, this is starting to look pretty decent, I think. Now what I'd like to do is just go ahead and add some lighter areas, like around like the eyebrows and maybe on top of the forehead, and then maybe down the middle of the nose and on the cheeks a little bit. So let's go ahead and get that pinkish tone back, brighten it up some more. About right there. And then brighten it up. Okay. And now we'll just kind of go in here ever so lightly. Just kind of start, maybe even brighten it up just a little bit more. Maybe kind of come towards the white in the center of the color circle there a little bit. Just kind of touch it up. Maybe just a little bit around the cheekbones. And maybe, like I said, around the middle of the nose. Okay, and let's put a little dot there on his chin. Okay, go ahead and save. let's put a little dot on the top of his cranium there. Okay, I think I'm pretty well happy with that skin tone. Now let's go ahead and save it one more time, and I'm going to crack open GIMP. See how long it takes to open up here. Seems like GIMP takes a little bit longer to open up than say Blender or whatever. There it goes. Okay. Now, if you do have Photoshop, a lot of these techniques that you can do in GIMP, you can also do easily in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and open up that texture map. It's going to be in my G drive, Blender files, House Elf. There you are. And what was it? Elf skin PNG. And let's go ahead and open that up. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go in and my fingers are used to the Photoshop shortcuts. The way I'm zooming in right now is I hold down Control and I'm scrolling my mouse wheel up and down. And then if you just hold down your mouse wheel as a button or scroll it, you can go up and down. Or if you, like I said, hold it down as a button, you can move your image around. So I want to fill in this area here so we don't have any harsh cutoffs there. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, I haven't really played with GIMP that much, so forgive me if you know exactly what I'm looking for. You're like screaming at me, it's right there! Well, I guess the clone tool will, no, there we go, healing tool. I didn't know if GIMP would have this or not. So, let's see. I believe if it's the same as Photoshop, we're going to hold down Alt and click somewhere. And then we'll let go of Alt and we'll go up here and start painting the area that we're trying to clone out. I guess that's not how you do it. There we go. Hold down Control and it kind of gets you a target. And there we go. Now we can soften up the edges. So we hold down Control to kind of target what color your area you're wanting to kind of copy. And just go ahead and click. And then you just paint it over so we get some nice smooth edges instead of those harsh transitions. Let's do the same thing down here. Let's go ahead and click right there and just go ahead and fill that in. And go ahead and drag this over. Go ahead and click there. Let's go ahead and clean up this. Oops, I'll do that part. Click there. Clean this up. Now, like I said, this is the healing brush tool. You can also use the clone tool to do the same thing. Hold down Control to click, and then you can, instead of just kind of healing the edge of it, what it's going to do is just going to copy where that's at right there, and it's going to fill that in. And that might be what you want to do sometimes. I want to change the brush that I'm using for right now. It's got that hard edge. I'd like to have it a nice softer edge. So I'm going to choose this brush right here. And let's make it a little bigger. Let's see. Scale. There we go. It's over here. Okay, so let's click Control, click right there, and we'll just come down a little bit and just kind of paint that same thing right there. And then healing brush can kind of clean it up. Okay. Oops, what happened there? Let's undo that. There we go. Okay, must have got the edge of the texture map there. Okay. You can also hold down Control and just move your mouse, and it'll move your texture over. And this looks like the ear area, and it needs a lot of cleanup. So we'll use the healing brush, and let's increase the brush size on it. Quite a bit there. That's good. And hold down Control. Let's just click over here. And then we'll just start painting inside here just to clear that up, get a nice smooth transition. Clean it up over here. And then, okay. Now if we want to zoom out, just hold down Control and scroll your mouse wheel. And then drag over. Let's do the same thing over here. Control, click there. Start cleaning this area in here up. If we zoom in some, a little easier. Well, the way the healing brush works is it takes a sample of where you clicked with control, and then as you're painting, it kind of mixes that sample that you took and kind of combines it with the surrounding pixel color. So that's, I guess, the easiest explanation. Okay, and let's go ahead and do this eye area as well. Scroll, zoom here, click there. Okay, clean up the nostril right there, and that little guy right there. And we'll just use the healing brush over on these lips. Oops, that's too big, isn't it? It's getting rid of the whole color. So let's make that a little smaller. There we go. Let's clean up the edges there. And right there. Okay, I'm not going to go too much further to the edge of the lips because then they won't really, they'll have a seam cut, kind of cutting them apart there. So that's pretty much how you clean the texture map up. I could keep working on this, but I'm going to go ahead and call it good. So let's go ahead and save. All right, see this, it's off screen here, but you can see it's saving, and done. Okay, so we'll minimize this. And now we go image, reload, and it's got all of our hard work in it now. So we're done painting our texture. So let's just go ahead and collapse that window. There we go. And now let's come out of texture paint into object mode. And let's expand this area just a little bit so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. And we have our elf head material. Now we just need to add that new texture to it. So let's pop over to our texture panel. Click there, new. And since we have that the skin texture already loaded into Blender, we just have to click. Just got to make sure we're in image or movie. And then scroll down to image, and we don't have to open it since it's already there. We just click here and select it. And then if you look up in here, you can see that it loads it there. I like to preview both the texture and the material so I can kind of see the texture I have selected and kind of get a preview of what it's going to look like on the model. So now we need to change the mapping from generated to UVs. And the image, or the influence, is on color, and that's exactly what it needs to be on. So now we're pretty well set. If we do a test render, should see our nice texture map on our model. So that looks pretty decent. The skin is way too shiny, obviously. But before I start messing with any of the other settings, I'm going to go ahead and bring in an eyeball. So this looks a little more natural. And I'm not going to make an eyeball. I'm going to direct you to the eyeball tutorial that I made a while back that kind of shows you how to do the, the iris texture and all that stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and escape out of my render there, and let's go ahead and save. Oops, save, not save as. Save. And I'm going to append. Let's go up in here. If I can remember where I put that. Tell you what, let me pause the recorder here and try to find that, and then I'll come back. So hold on just a second. Okay, success in finding it. That's from a while back. That's from the old Alien tutorials, if you remember that. But it'll still work. I still need I need the eyeball file itself and the eyeball textures. Is that the only one I need? I think so. So let's just copy that. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in the House Elf folder. Go ahead and paste. There we go. Okay, go ahead and minimize that. And I can just go back to the House Elf. Where is it at? There we go. All right. Go ahead and append the... I'll go ahead and do the whole scene because it seems like whenever I try individual elements, it never really wants to work too well for me. So I'll just go ahead and append that scene and then pop into the other scene right there. And I don't need the lamp or the camera. So I'll just go ahead and delete those. And I don't really need that empty there either. So let's go ahead and go to Object. And we want to make links, objects to scene, and going to scene. And now that it's in scene, I can go ahead and delete this scene, and you can see it is right there. Now, one thing that I was wondering here a few weeks ago, and I discussed the situation with Jonathan Williamson, is about how to, if you've seen any of the concept 3D artwork for the movie Sintel or anything like that, you notice that when they show the rendered versions, the eyes look nice and good. They look like they're supposed to, but then when you're looking at the clay view, the solid view non-rendered version, you can see basically, I'm gonna hide that outer shell. You can see this. So it's like, how do they do that? And then it renders it. But that's really a lot more simple than it should be, it seems like. So I got my model selected here. If you go to the object panel and scroll down here to display, you can turn on transparency. And boom, any item that you have set to be transparent is automatically set to be transparent. So that outer, what is it, membrane, the lens and the cornea and everything that I had set as transparent on this eyeball, it's still there. If we tab into edit mode and go ahead and unhide it, it's still there, remember. But since it's transparent, we can turn it off. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's get this eyeball lined up to where it's supposed to be. We'll go ahead and arrange pivot point around the median. Go ahead and clear out the rotations there, and let's go ahead and drag it down and line it up with these other spheres that we had as placeholders. Go ahead and pop into wireframe view so we can see it a little better. And let's line it up there. Maybe a little bit bigger. There we go. Side view. Go ahead and line it up this way. Okay. And since these two spheres are one item, I'm going to have to go ahead and duplicate this sphere. And let's drag it along the x-axis perfectly. So just hit X so it doesn't move on accident. Let's line that one up. Okay. And now we can select the original eyeball placeholders. So just go ahead and delete them. Let's pop back into solid view. And we can kind of see how our eyeballs are going to look. Let's go ahead and save. And you know what? Let's go ahead and do a test render, see what it's going to look like with those eyeballs on there. It's gonna, it's not Harry Potter, or it's not movie quality yet, but it definitely does look a lot better than just some white spheres. So let's go ahead and escape out, and let's start working some magic here. Let's go ahead and save. I know I just saved, but you know me, I like to save often. And the magic I'm talking about is the subsurface scattering. So we got our model. Let's go over here, and while I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and go to the material settings, and let's set that specular level way down. He doesn't need to be that shiny. So let's set the intensity to, let's put about 0.15, I'll say, and the hardness doesn't need to be too hard, so let's put that to 25 instead of 50. And so now if we were to render, we'd get a nice, fairly shiny, not necessarily wet, but not really powder dry either. So that's about what we want. Okay, so the SSS, the subsurface scattering. Scroll down here, and you want to check that box that says subsurface scattering. Then we need to expand the little option there, and we need to set up some settings. Now they have a lot of presets here. Well, not a lot, but there's more than a few. Usually what I do when I'm doing a character model, I go to one of the skins. You can do skin 1, which is sort of maybe a Caucasian skin tone, or if you go to skin 2, it'd be, actually, I guess that's the opposite. Skin 2 is the more fair-skinned Caucasian, then skin 1 would be more for maybe an African American if you were to darken it up some. But since our elf is moderately fair-skinned, I guess you could say, you can see it already set the skin tone to be darker here. We want to go with skin 2. And it's still a little bit too dark, so let's go ahead and click in that color and drag it a little bit more towards the center so it's a little bit more white. and then kind of brighten it up just a little bit too. And then we'll just go ahead and click out here. Kind of get a preview of what it's going to look like. And another thing that affects the overall color are these colors right in here in the RGB radius. You notice that the red is typically the highest, especially for skin tone, because you get the the blood going through it underneath. So if we were to lower that down just a little, maybe put it on closer to 3, and then lower these as well, everything will start brightening up some. Okay, now if I were to just go ahead and render it now, it would probably have a very, very waxy look. I'll go ahead and show you. And you'll always notice that the subsurface scattering usually takes, not usually, but always takes a little longer to render because it's got to calculate all that light and things. So if you look, you can see it looks really waxy. The way to fix that is to change the scale. Right now it's set way too high, and I typically like to drag it down to a lot lower, usually around 0.02 or 0.01. Let's go with 0.02, and let's go ahead and zoom in the camera a little bit here. Go into camera view, 0 on your numpad. Let's go ahead and zoom in some so we can get a little bit closer look. And then let's go to our render settings, and I like to display the render in its own window, so change that to new window, and let's go ahead and up the resolution. So right now it's set to 50% of 1920 by 1080. We don't want to go to 100% because that would take forever, so let's just set it to 70 and go ahead and save, and let's go ahead and render out again, and that's still a pretty good size. And also the larger your render window is, the longer it's going to take to render. But this particular render will look pretty decent because it's so big. But already that looks pretty good. However, I'm thinking it's still a little too waxy, so we're going to turn that down some more after it finishes. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape so it doesn't have, we don't have to sit there and let it render. We can already see kind of what we need to see. Let's go ahead and escape out there, go back to our scene, and let's go ahead and change this back down. We'll say 60. That should be good. Go ahead and save. And now back to our materials panel. Let's go ahead and put that down to 0.01. And another thing I like to do is change the scattering weight. Front, usually I leave at 1. Back, I like to bump up to usually 2.5 to 3, sometimes more. I'll go ahead and put 3 on here. And then to test it out, I like to set up a light behind him. It's kind of going to be pointing at him, and with the SSS, the back, that's kind of the back side of the model from the viewing angle. So now this light is going to be on the back side, and the light that's shining through the back settings in the SSS are what it allows. It judges how much light is going to shine through, like to show like how thin the ears are and how much light you can see through the earlobes and that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and set up some lights a little bit better here. I'm going to turn this light to be a spotlight, and I'm going to go ahead and pop in here and create an empty to be proper. Go ahead and track to that. And you know what? Let's go ahead and track this guy too. Go ahead and turn him into a spotlight and track him to the empty as well. And let's go ahead and just center up the empty there on our elf head. And then down here. Okay, so now we need to set up the light settings. I want them to have buffered shadows, and the fall off needs to be inverse linear. Same thing on the other guy, inverse linear and a buffer shadow. And now I need to change the bias to be a lot lower. Let's put that at 0.15 is probably good, and 0.15 there, and we'll go ahead and save. And now let's take a look at our render. That's a little bit better sized. Renders out the base SSS thing first. It kind of goes in and fills, and I can see that that skin looks pretty good. I think I'll stick with those particular SSS settings. I think I'll change the specular levels on the flesh a little bit. It's still a little bit too shiny for my taste. And then we'll kind of edit the eyes just a little bit too. It's kind of hard to tell the backlight through the ears because they're lit from the front too. But after we get everything set up a little bit more, we can turn off the light on the front or just rearrange it to where there's more light coming from behind them than in front, and then you can see a little easier how that works. Okay, so like I said, I want to set the sheen down on the specular level just a little bit. So actually, let's make it a little more hard. Let's put it at 35. And let's set the intensity to let's do it half of that, what it was. It's 0.15, so let's set it to 0.075. And that'll probably work. Now, to really make it pop, let's center that guy back up. We want the eyeballs, let's go back to our render. If you hit F11, it'll bring that back up. Since mine's already rendered, F11 won't work. But the skin looks pretty decent, but the eyeballs, they kind of just look like, you know, they just look like cue balls stuck in his head or something. So let's make the eyeballs look like they belong there. And the way we do that is we give them a subsurface as well. So turn that on there. And what I like to do on eyeballs is, instead of giving them a skin, I like to give them one of these white shadings, like the whole milk, the cream, or the skim milk. Let's go with the skim milk. And that kind of gives it a tiny bit of a yellowish hue. And probably the scale is way too high. Let's set it at 0.05. And one more thing I probably need to do with the skin on the elf head as well is, over here you'll see the blend. You have color and you have texture. Now texture, if you put it all the way up to 100, it's kind of blur everything, and it's not going to look real lifelike. So it helps for when there's, you know, idiosyncrasies, if that's the right word, with the texture map, like some of the I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Artifacts. Some of the artifacts were left there on the texture map. If you blur it a little bit with this blend, it'll kind of help smooth those out. So we don't want to go 100% all the way, like I said. So let's just put that at 0.5. And then let's do the same thing on the texture map there. Let's put that at 0.5 as well. So, okay, let's go ahead and save. And we'll go ahead and render out again. And you can kind of see that the preview SSS has that color tone to it now. As soon as this finishes rendering out, it's going to take a little bit longer. You can already see that the eyes look a little softer, and they look a little more like they kind of belong there. So that's pretty good on the elf and the texture map. There's one thing I want to do though before I call this done. I want to set up a way to give this a nice strong render to make it look really lifelike. So let's escape out, and let me go ahead and show you that again. Point a thing out. One thing that really makes eyeballs really pop and really make them look like they're alive and they have life to them is when you have a glare here over the iris area. So if we rotate our camera or rotate the light down to where this light that you can see right here, this highlight, is more over this, man, it's really going to make that look really lifelike. So let's just go ahead and try to do that. So we'll go into top view here. And let's do both. Let's move our camera a little more towards the front. Let's see. I guess it's not tracking to anything. I was rotating it around the cursor. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pop in here, Shift A, and add an empty. Go ahead and track the camera to the empty bank like that, and now I'll be able to control that a little easier. Maybe not quite that far. And then drag that up some. Let's just zoom out a tad. And another thing we can do to make this look not quite so like you're looking through a peephole and it's got a real fisheye effect, we can change the angle over here on the camera settings. So let's put that about 50. That's a little more realistic. So set that about like that, and then let's pop in and let's move this light around a little bit, about like so. And its energy is set at 0.1, or excuse me, 1.0, and this one also is set at 1.0, which is good. Now, another thing that really helps polish off an image is a nice background. Right now we have the just that standard gray background, which, you know, is nice, but it doesn't have the pop that we might want. So let's do this. Let's go to our world settings and check the blend sky. And I want to change my horizon color to let's make it black, and then change the zenith color to a little bit lighter gray, so we got a nice transition there. So I'll go ahead and save this, and just to add a little bit of life to it, I'm going to grab these eyes and let's rotate them on the x-axis so they're kind of looking up more than just kind of staring down. Okay, now go ahead and save, and let's do a render. Pop this back up there. Slowly but surely. Hopefully I got that that glare there on the eyeball like I was wanting. Yeah. See how much better that looks? Looks maybe not 100% lifelike now, but it certainly helps out. Okay, so that looks pretty decent, I think. And I'm going to go ahead and save that image. F3. Let's name this elf. And today's date. Today happens to be September 28th, so I'll say 09/28/2010, and this is image A. And I'll go ahead and save. Now, like I was talking about earlier, one more quick thing before we go. I was talking about earlier showing the light through the earlobes. Now let me show you how to do that. Really, you need more light behind them than in front of them. So let's move this light kind of over to the side just a little bit, and let's change its settings right here to, let's put it down to 0.35, and then let's set this light. Let's put it at 1.5, and then let's kind of angle our camera a little bit more so we can see more of our ears. So there we go. And now let's render here. And if everything's going the way I'm hoping, we should see some nice glow behind our ears. Renderings can take forever sometimes, especially when you're excited to see something. Okay, there's not a lot to it there, but there is a little bit of glow, especially around the edges. But to increase that, you can just play with your subsurface scattering a little bit until you kind of get the results you want. But anyways, that's basically our house elf. That's kind of the end of the road there. So I hope you learned something. I hope you really enjoyed this. Halloween's coming up. The new Harry Potter movie will be out here in a couple of months. But I had fun doing this. I hope you did too. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.